Hello, everyone. Welcome to our WIS Presents webinar. We're so glad to have you all here. So this webinar, it will focus on how we got into sports tech in our category, where we teach you about all the amazing women and how they got into this really cool space. In this space, we're specifically going to focus on NFTs in sports. And so we're joined by some amazing women, and I would love to introduce them. But first, I'll say I'm Emma Hensis, and I'm the content and marketing manager at WIS. And I'm so glad to be with you here today. And I would love to introduce our amazing women that we have today. So we have Stephanie Howard, who's a founding WIS board member and co-founder and COO of Endstate. We have Marcia Caporn, head revenue at Credenza. We are so happy to have met you through board member and board treasurer, Sandy Cound, who is the founder and CEO of Credenza. And then Natalie Rudd, the head of strategy at Autograph, which is an NFT platform. And we're so glad that Autograph reached out to us, and we are thrilled to have you on as an expert. But first, before we really get in about your backgrounds and the work that you do in NFTs, I just want to start off briefly. Can we explain a little bit about what Web3 is, what NFTs are, because I really want people to have a good understanding before we even get to tell them all the cool work you're doing. So if someone just wants to kick off, what is Web3 and what does decentralization mean?
I can take a first stab, but for me, Web3 is kind of like an all-inclusive term that everyone's kind of jumbled everything together. So including crypto and NFTs and the metaverse is one balloon. But one point I think it's really powerful for me, it means blockchain. It's how blockchain is helping create a new future for, the internet. And it's important to talk about the two types of blockchains, where the first blockchain is really just a ledger, and that's where you find Bitcoin and cryptos. And now this new wave of blockchain, where NFTs and smart contracts, and they're more programmable, have kind of emerged in Ethereum. And so I think that's where we're going to live today, in this latter, not in the crypto blockchains. But I think it is important because everyone kind of lumps them all together to realize there is two different kind of products there, or worlds. And so for me, it's everything. Web3 is everything, but today we'll be over in more of the blockchains that are programmable with smart contracts.
Absolutely. Marcia, will you just expand a little bit on blockchains? I know you have a great article that I'm going to drop in the chat, Blockchains for Blondes. It really helped me learn a little bit more about this space. But if you just want to give a little bit of background on blockchain, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, so blockchain, really, the first use case was to replace notaries. So really, where is a simple use case of like a ledger system? And so really it was to try to get rid of those notary systems. And then because it's so secure and it's so hard to change the blocks, you really have to take over the whole chain. Security became one of its leading features, hence DeFi came in, and that's where you saw, that being the next emerging use case. And then where you saw the emergence of NFTs, and really I think where the future of the internet will go is with smart contracts. And that's a technology that enables like quick agreements between two parties. Blockchain is a great use case of an escrow. Like, do you have this money? Do you have this asset? And like helping with that transaction. So that's kind of a quick summary for everybody. And then obviously I give some kind of funny storytelling in that article.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Stephanie, would you be able to tell us a little bit, like specifically in basic terms, what an NFT is and kind of how it functions in the sports world?
Yeah. So an NFT stands for non-fungible token. So when something is fungible, like a dollar bill, it is equivalent to and can thus be exchanged for any other dollar bill. But in contrast, a non-fungible token is a unique asset. So it's in the digital form and it cannot be exchanged for any other NFT. So that means every NFT is really a one-of-a-kind item. And then each NFT is set up with a unique identification code and metadata that distinguishes one NFT from another. So that's sort of like the technical side of it. Many people think they're just digital art or JPEGs or, that people collect and spend too much money on. And there's a lot of sort of misinformation about what they can be. But they can be much, much more than just a collectible piece of art. They can have utility. And so they can give holders access to things and rewards that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. So these are often referred to as token gated, meaning that your NFT is like a token that can give you access to whatever creative idea the creator of the project can think of. And so, in the sports world and some of the things that we're doing, and we can talk about later, are, just kind of having fun with that. Like, what are the experiences that we can take an athlete and connect his fan base to, and and bring to life through the fact that whatever we're making in the physical world, we make an NFT of, and then that opens up and unlocks these really interesting connections that fans can have with their with somebody that they're excited about in the sports world or in the art world or in the music world.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up an interesting point talking about the physical world. We've heard a lot about the metaverse. That's kind of this word that's been thrown around. And Natalie, I was wondering if you could just give us a little bit of an explanation on the metaverse and again, just how NFTs fit in that world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's probably at this point, like, no codified definition of the metaverse, but I think, some ways to think about it, it is sort of like a digital world, right? And within sort of this metaverse or this digital world, you may have multiple virtual worlds, right? So you may hear about the sandbox or decentralized or some of these sort of, again, digital worlds. And so, like how these all come together, like they can be two separate ideas and don't necessarily have to interact. But if you think about the premise that an NFT is this non-fungible token that allows you to prove ownership over certain assets, that would allow sort of people who hold NFTs to prove ownership in this virtual space. And so if you believe in sort of the open metaverse or interoperability such that like I could take what I have in the sandbox and move it over to Decentraland, or if I'm a gamer and I have a skin or an item in one game and I want to take it somewhere else, well, the NFT, like that skin could be an NFT, and it would allow you to prove that you own it and move it across, right? So the NFT and the metaverse, if you think about how it comes together, again, just to quickly maybe do it in a more concise way, is to sort of prove ownership in that virtual space.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you all for explaining that and laying out the definitions. I think it's really important that we make this content accessible to everyone. So whether before you came in here what an NFT was or not, or how it works, we're glad that we could all have this foundational level. So we can get into the cool, really nitty gritty of it now. So would you please all introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit out of, your journey to the business, kind of how you got into sports tech, and then really what you're doing to impact the world of Web3 and NFTs. Marcia, you could start if you'd like. Thank you.
Sure. I was very lucky. I was working with a beach volleyball company, and they were really live events, moving after COVID just into purely live events and pivoting. And so our investor said, go figure out Web3. At that point, NIL was just taking off, which is name, image, and likeness for college. And she said, go just research it and, learn what you can. And so that's where I kind of used that time. I used like about 3 months to just really learn the space and what I thought use cases were good or bad. And serendipitously, I met our founder, who had already sold a blockchain ticketing company to Ticketmaster. So I knew he could build what I thought should be built. And so for me, it was really important aligning myself with someone that had proven technical skills in the space if we're really trying to go disrupt the business models of the larger organizations from like an operations focus. So I was kind of just lucky, right place, right time, and asking the right questions.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And what are you doing now in the Web3 NFT space?
Yeah, so it's funny, the metaverse example was perfect about moving different worlds. It's really like moving across all domains. Anywhere where you have a network of domains based off of Web 2, so they have their little fiefdom, and there's like data moving across them that you have some problems. Those are great use cases for blockchain, that the central system can kind of help them communicate more efficiently. And so we're really living in that space of how do we make, these really fragmented operation systems between ticketing and concessions and websites, how do we bring them all together and allow them to communicate really seamlessly and engage with the fans in a really personal way, dynamic way, for these brands?
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you. And Stephanie, would you please kind of give us how you got to Endstate and in this world? We'd love to hear about that.
Yes, I've spent over 25 years in the world of designing physical products. And most of the products I designed were sneakers. I'd spent some years as a design director at Nike and New Balance, spent time at Reebok, consulted on innovation for companies such as Timberland, the North Face, Vans, Titleist. And then in 2020, I met my co-founder of Endstate, Bennett Collin. He has an expertise in blockchain. So he introduced, I was actually in a webinar. I was speaking on a webinar. He saw me and had an expertise in blockchain and was very, very interested in sort of connecting what he understood about the future of NFTs with sneakers, because he was a lifelong sneakerhead. And so we connected, started talking about sort of all the different things that we could create and build a brand, and then work with collaborators and sort of help them build their own personal brands at the same time we're building ours through these, really interesting product and sneaker collaborations. And so his first company sold to GoDaddy. He was there. I was consulting on innovation. We left our full-time jobs, and May of 2021 started Endstate. And so what Endstate is it's a lifestyle brand that combines the physical and the digital to unlock connections to what you're passionate about. So a little bit what I was talking about before, these NFTs can really open up these really incredible experiences. And I can take you through an example now, or I can do it later after we do introductions on like kind of what that might look like in terms of unlocking connections.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. We'll have Natalie introduce herself and then we'll come right back to that, Stephanie. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Nice to meet everyone today. So as sort of it was teed up before, I'm the head of strategy at a company called Autograph. My path into sports tech has been like pretty circuitous, you could say. So I started my career in investment management. I did private wealth management, portfolio management, and then I performed research at a hedge fund before I went back to business school. And from business school, I was went into management consulting. I was at the Boston Consulting Group for 7 years. I left as a partner. I focused on things from marketing, sales, and pricing to consumer to industrials, and finished sort of my time there really focused in the private equity space. And I've always been a massive sports person, and so always knew I wanted to get into the sports space, but just never knew how. And towards the end of my career, I met some folks at Autograph, and just sort of it seemed like the right place at the right time in terms of the ambitions and sort of the sports thing that had the pull, and they were looking for a head of strategy. So it was sort of like this great overlap between my skill set and my domain expertise and kind of what the company was looking for. Really quickly in terms of Autograph, so we're an NFT platform. We bring together the most iconic brands and legendary names in sports, entertainment, and culture. So far to date, we create NFTs, so we do sort of the end-to-end piece, and it's really been around digital collectibles. And we're now moving more into sort of fan experiences, all sort of with the NFT being sort of the ticket to those experiences.
Really cool. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, we all know that this space is super new, so it's really interesting how everyone has entered into this world, and there's plenty of room. So I hope that we're inspiring people to also get into this space right now. Stephanie, it would be great if you could show us a use case on NFTs.
Sure. Let me pull this up. All right. So we have a live drop right now. One of our sneaker drops is a collaboration with Devontae Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles. Go Birds for anyone who's a Eagles fan out there. But he's an amazing athlete, amazing person, off field as well, super stylish, great sense of humor, work ethic like there's no other on the field. If you watched Monday night's game, you just saw him perform at extremely high levels. So we were excited. This is our first athlete collaboration. And what the NFT can unlock are as an example, are like limited edition premium sneakers. So we always make physical sneakers with every collaboration or physical product. So that's the, that's already an amazing, I think, sort of thing to have. Like if you're an athlete, you get this physical sneaker, and if you're a fan of theirs, you get to kind of collect your favorite athletes, signature limited edition sneaker. But now we have unparalleled access to events, like in-person events with Devontae, in-person game day watching party. The ticket is your sneaker. Your sneaker allows you to be, enter into the event. We know that you own the NFT because we can scan the NFC chip in your sneaker. And then the really exciting kind of fun that we're having with this is the experiential part around his performance on field. So when Devontae wins, you win, right? So if he did this on Monday 3 times, scored a touchdown, and had 2 plays over 41 yards, everyone gets a cheesesteak. And so literally that night, people got into their inbox, here's your gift certificate for a cheesesteak. That's because it's a Philly connection, of course, but you can be very creative with these things. If he, once he receives, it reaches 1,000 yards receiving, people will get, people who own the NFT will get a limited edition football card. And if he gets MVP of the NFL at the end of the season, everybody will get a luxury watch. So not only are they super fans of Devontae Smith and the Eagles, but they will continue to be fans and really get excited throughout the entire season, because they might, get with the sneakers are packed with so much added value because they're connected to the NFT. From the in-person event that Devontae is hosting to all these like fun perks and rewards that you get when he performs on field.
That's really cool. That's a really great use case. And as an Eagles fan, I love it. And I'm thinking you're sending the cheesesteaks to Geno's. I'm not sure, but personally a favorite in Philadelphia. But on that note, Stephanie, how, I think I have a lot of questions myself, as in content and creating content. How do you actually create an NFT? What is the technical work behind creating the NFT?
Yeah, it's, so the NFT can be anything, right? It doesn't have to be art. In our case, it's a 3D rendering of the sneakers in some really interesting environments that we create. And then the NFT, you have to create a smart contract, right? That the NFT is, so that there's, the asset is created and on chain. And so there's some engineering involved in that. And of course, if you're starting from scratch, you need to do your homework on what blockchain you're going to be, kind of working on. And then but I think what everybody really needs to understand is that NFT can be anything, right? So it's not just art, it's any sort of asset that somebody wants to have, created in a, immutable on the immutable ledger of the blockchain, so that the ownership is there and verified.
Yeah, I like to build on that, because I think as people are getting more sophisticated with smart contracts and we're getting more sophisticated in space, we're moving away from the NFT, which is the technical term, and marketing people are getting involved. And it's like, this is your membership card, this is a badge, this is a member, this is your ticket. And so we're getting the confidence to move away. It's all technically an NFT, but we're actually looking at what's the value to the customer now as we mature as an ecosystem. And so that's, I think, where we're going. It's your pass into whatever, it's your ID pass. So it really is useful for people to realize, the terminology will change, and then the technical back underlay will be an NFT, but it'll be a badge or a season ticket holder, or it's all the things.
Yeah, I think that's, and I'm gonna continue to build on this. Right. So to what Stephanie said, right, the media that is attached to an NFT can be anything, right? Art, videos, music, games, it can be text, it can be memes, it could be code, it could be virtual land, whatever it is, right? It's everything. And then to build on what Marcia was saying, right, it's the NFT space is moving, I would argue, away from this idea of novelty, right? Originally it was a piece of digital art or an image or whatever, right? You can talk about a cartoon ape or all sorts of things. That's what it started as. But as people got more into this, the question has always been like, well, what do I do with this, right? And now that's where it's evolving into what is the utility that comes behind it. So as Stephanie was showing, right, it's the cheesesteak if he wins, or the luxury watch if he becomes MVP, or like Marcia was saying, like there are sort of technical use cases as to why a ticket makes sense to be an NFT, right? The blockchain will allow you to show authenticity, provenance, right? So now you don't have to be worried that you're buying a counterfeit ticket. You can actually track that original ticket issuance all along the blockchain to see that like you're buying a real one. So it's moving away from this novelty into like actual real world applications that solve a consumer need or a consumer pain point. And I think that's still all being like all shaking out because you're just seeing different applications, different use cases. And I think it's going to evolve tremendously in the coming years.
Absolutely. Natalie, do you have a favorite use case or a favorite implementation of this?
So it's a great question. I don't know that I have a favorite, but I will tell you one that I think is cool. And so maybe this goes back to the novelty, but I think about like where NFTs can be disruptive or do things different than the way like the world works today. And this goes back to like the ethos and principles of Web3, right? Around like decentralization and that you're moving things out of sort of these like centralized state entities and now more towards like a distributed network of individuals or others, right? And so I think one that's pretty cool is, I guess you can call it a project called WAGMI United. And this is where like the leadership team of this, again, call it a project, bought an English football club called Crawley Town. And Crawley Town is in English Football League 2, which is like the 4th division sort of soccer league within England. And their whole idea is to try and take Crawley Town to the Premier League. And what they've done is they've minted NFTs and selling NFTs to individuals, one can presume. And it's to help them give them a voice in terms of like how the club can be run, right? And it's not, they're not buying ownership in the club, but it allows them to provide input on like big picture club items. I don't know, I can't remember all of the details off my head, but I think it's probably like, we got to choose the kit, we got to figure out like, you know, do we need to replace the manager or like the CEO or whatever, right? But it's a collective decision amongst a decentralized group of people who on their own would probably never be able to afford to buy a franchise, but together they can be invested as fans and get a meaningful voice in how the club is run or certain decisions. So again, I don't know that it's my favorite, but I think it's like a pretty good example, pretty fun use case, and like sort of touches on a lot of sort of the themes of Web3, decentralization, NFTs, all of the above.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Marcia too, I remember when we first were talking about this a while ago, you used that word decentralized fan bases and kind of said it's a new way to serve fans. Natalie, which you totally talked about. Marcia, do you feel like you have a favorite, doesn't have to be your favorite, but like a really good way of how this does serve as a way for fan bases to come together in a decentralized way where they can be in charge per se?
Yeah, I mean, I think she spoke to a really good one. I've seen those pop up. I've even suggested them, you know, almost like funding for projects that maybe you can't get funded for emerging niches, women's sports. Obviously, I'm very passionate about that space. I think those are really meaningful. So any kind of really niche communities can really just use this tool to really amplify their projects and then empower their fan bases, like to manage the whole process, the whole creative process, like feedback, behind the scene cuts, like those kind of engagement loops that you can bring so close is, you know, that's the future. And then I think that's what it is. It's like at scale, being able to create like white glove privileges and management of it doesn't, and I think the future won't even be scarcity. It's going to be like, how do you include everybody? I mean, the first use case was collectibles, but the reality is it should be everybody in your fan base. Like they should all be on, they should all be included. And then they're just going to have different experiences. And as we like open up to that, like mindset of it's not scarcity, it's everybody, it's every ticket, it's every action that your fan does with you should be a part of who they are, rather than their hair color and zip code. I think that's going to be really good for athletes and teams and the whole ecosystem.
As you all mentioned, this is a big disruptor in the space and it's changing, the way we look at fan bases. Do you feel like is there any big challenges that are coming up in this space? And how is your company or organization working to solve that? I'll leave it up for anyone, whoever wants to get at it first.
I think the lack of knowledge and education about what NFTs are is a good starting point. I think, there's still a lot of, what the mainstream media covered on them as, they're overpriced JPEGs of art. And a lot of people think that they are, and they're a scam, and they just don't understand the underlying technology. I think that, we can overcome that by showing real world applications and token gated experiences in real life that are exciting. I think, for creators, it's going to be amazing technology, right? So that they can start to own their own content instead of a big tech company owning their content. They get to own it, do what they want with it, create value from it, and get royalties, on an ongoing basis. There's just a lot that the technology will unlock, but we have to overcome the fact that what the media said about NFTs was they're just overpriced art, JPEGs, and that's not the truth.
To build on that, it's like for sports, like athletes have kind of been cut out of the content in a lot of space, and they've been cut out of the relationship with the fan. So I think they're going to have to really disrupt current, managers of different silos in sport and really demand access to the fans and back into those like loops. And so for me, and where we sit, it's like current models, they're not going to want to give up the keys. Like they have their little, like they own something and they don't want to like give that back up to the team or to the athlete. And so those are going to be really interesting places where I think unions are going to have to kind of band together, and smart agents are going to have to just kind of get the athletes back in there, like you said, so they're getting royalties, and smart contracts can dynamically give royalties and it's not hard anymore. So it's going to be an interesting time to see how that flushes out, or how long that takes to kind of disrupt and get them back into that relationship, where right now it's kind of through social media, but that even's filtered, where now they can kind of get it back.
And maybe I'll add a couple other things. I think there are some pain points that are going to be on the consumer side, and then I think there are some, and sort of call it on the business side. I think if I start on the consumer side, I think some of the biggest challenges and pain points are really around user experience. If you think about some of this, right, for people who are new to the space, you've got to purchase crypto oftentimes. You've got to open a non-custodial wallet, which if you've ever been through that process, I think it would send shivers down a lot of spines when you get the warning, like, here's your 12 word seed phrase. Like, don't write it down, don't save it anywhere, put it in a safe and burn it or something, right? But if you forget it, you lose everything, right? And so that is a pretty tough, I think, consumer experience or user experience. I think the lack of display, right? So if we think about the early use cases of NFTs, where a lot of them have been around the cool visual assets, these are stuck on, you have to go through OpenSea and find your wallet address, or have it on your wallet on your phone. They're starting to come up with hardware to help with the display, but I think sort of display is a big one, right? Because when you're talking collectibles, which has been one of the earliest use cases, it's all about flex and projector, or what a lot of people buy collectibles for if they're not there for the profit. And then I think it was Stephanie who mentioned sort of just the education and terminology, right? Some of these things you could say with such less jargon, and it would feel way more comfortable for most people. And so I think coming at all of those in different ways, which is you're starting to see more people do fiat purchases, finding ways to buy NFTs without having to have a non-custodial wallet. So various ways to do sort of wallets as a service and all of those sorts of things. So the space is working on them, and there's still a long way to go, but I think those are a lot of the consumer pain points, and I guess in my opinion. And then I think hitting on some of the business pain points and challenges. One, I think when it comes to like the NIL or name, image, and likeness rights, it's or just rights in general, it's the rights management. What exactly can you use? And then what can you give to customers, right? You hear in this space a lot about people having commercial rights, but as soon as you bring in these athletes and these brands, oftentimes they're not willing to give up the commercial rights for people to go use these and create businesses off of them. So understanding that landscape and finding ways to mitigate that risk is important. And then maybe the last thing I'll highlight in terms of challenges that I can imagine popping up is going to be around fan experience. As much as we're talking about how these NFTs can enhance the fan experience, I also think what you're seeing, particularly when you look at the big sports leagues, is they're carving up their rights, right? So let's use the NBA as the example, right? Or I don't know if they're the best example. NFL, maybe. Right? They have video moments with Dapper, but they've done fantasy football with another company, right? And you're starting to see this. And so if I'm a fan, how do I know where to go? Right? Do I have to go to all of these different places? Like we're just seeing this like intermediation of the fan experience. And so I think that at some point is going to get potentially painful and will need to be addressed. But that's maybe putting a crystal ball out there or a projection, a hot take, and seeing where it lands.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and that leads me to my next question. Natalie, what do you think in an ideal future looks like for this world? What's like the ideal space for that?
I wish I knew. I wish I could give you a good answer, but like, I don't know, right? I think what we're seeing now is like companies and brands testing and learning to figure out what is the right use case that resonates with consumers. And like, I think if we all knew, it would massive, right? But like, I think we're all trying to figure that out because of how quickly this space is evolving, the headwinds that we're seeing, like it's just like every day is truly a new day. And what probably is, a year in some spaces, maybe a month or 2 or 6 months in this space. And so, yeah, I wish I could give a good answer, but I don't have a good one.
Well, I appreciate that. Stephanie, and in the world of Endstate, what do you want the future to look like for Endstate?
Well, I would say, in this space in general, and what you said was just totally right in that things are moving so quickly, right? The consumer experience of having to open a wallet and all of the, like we're on our 6th drop now, and we went from that really tough consumer experience on our first drop to like, yes, you can use a credit card, super simple, you're ready to go. And all of this technology is just moving so quickly. But I would just say, like, use your imagination to tie any kind of experience to a product, and then you can see how open and ripe the space is for innovation. And then also, as our worlds become increasingly mixed between online and in real life experiences, people are going to want all of the products of value to be with them in both places. So we talked about the metaverse a little bit earlier, and right now it's in its sort of infancy, and it's messy, and it's not really a place that you want to. Some people will spend their time there, but like it's not built in the way that it's promised to be built. But that there's a lot of big companies and actually individuals working to make what we believe will be these online interactions that will have a really high fidelity experience. So that mixed with our physical experiences, with AR technology, like life is going to get really interesting. So instead of like your digital time being spent scrolling on a screen, seeing your friends in a flat little 2D screen, it will feel maybe more like somebody across the world is in a space with you. You're interacting together. You're going to want to have you're going to want ownership of whatever you have, that you're self-expressing when you're wearing in real life. You're going to want that online with you. I think that there's just going to be this really interesting mix of what we're starting to see now built in what we talk about the metaverse, and what really will happen, which will just be these really interesting high fidelity augmented experiences that won't be like this like separate physical life and digital and everybody's going to be online. It's going to be this just a better experience in both places for everyone. So we're the idea of owning your products and having kind of having the ability to sort of create and own and have your content that you have ownership of, all of that. We believe, really strongly that everybody should have the ability to kind of take part of. And this technology for us is just, really, really exciting. All I think about is innovative ideas around the experiences that we can create.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. It makes me excited to see where this goes in the future. Marcia, is there anything at Credenza that you feel like, as time goes on and everything becomes more pliable, is there like a perfect project in your world that you can't wait to work on as this technology advances?
I mean, to be honest, Natalie's pain point of the fans not knowing where to go or not being connected across all the domains, like from NHL to a team to their store to their, like, if you're a member, you should travel across all those as the same person. And like the leagues, I think, are going to get savvy enough to basically, whoever they manage, the back end of it's going to be like, here's the smart contract that manages these relationships. And if you're this vendor, here's your keys. And then we're taking the keys back when you're done, or you don't do what you're supposed to. But that's really, where I talk about how do you connect them all and really have them, the team and the league back at the center, at the heart of the fan relationship. Because if anything goes wrong, it's not that vendor, it's the league, it's the team. So really they should always be the first, gatekeeper in who that person is and what they do across everything.
Absolutely. I do want to let the audience know that we will be taking audience questions at the end, so feel free to put them in. I know Mary Lou, our CEO and founder of WIST, has put some questions in, which we'll get to. But while we have time, I really want to make sure, because our mission at WIST is driving transformative growth opportunities for women, what advice do you all have for young professionals wanting to get into this space?
I mean, the easy is just read like leaders of companies, because they're blogging. They're like, they've said it's 6 months ago. If you read something, it's not going to be relevant today. It's going to be called different. And so following people that Twitter is a big hotbed for NFTs and people in that space, but just follow them on LinkedIn. They're sharing what they've done. They're sharing their projects. And then also take walks so you don't get in groupthink, because it's, you don't want to just go where they're going, and really use your own life experience into this world, because smarter people, new life experiences is making it so exciting because you see everything differently.
Yeah, that's great. I would add that, Web3, as we're talking about, is the technology of the future. And so it's going to open up a lot of opportunities that you just don't even know what they are right now. So for example, like Web 2, when we talk about Web 1, that's the internet. And when we talk about Web 2, we're talking about sort of like mobile and, mobile commerce and social media and what that opened up. But when the iPhone first came out, you didn't know that it was going to open up concepts like Waze, right? Aggregating traffic data, or Snapchat messaging, or Uber, for example. Like there's just all these things that you didn't know that the technology was going to open up. And I think that's, I just want to give the advice to sort of get to know this technology and just start to figure out what it's going to open up, because all those creations haven't been invented yet. And it's a ripe world for people with creative ideas.
I'll maybe add a couple other things just to continue to pile on, which is like, number one, it's a brand new space, right? So like this idea that there's a barrier, if you don't have experience, you can't get in. Like, most people have come into this space, either they're self-educated or they're coming in with the sort of the inherent belief that they're going to figure it out through reading, following thought leaders, whatever it may be, right? So one, to some degree, everybody's new now, so it's great. Number two, like as you think about it from like a functional expertise perspective, even just looking at the three of us, right? We all come from different backgrounds. If you think about any company that's in Web3, maybe I shouldn't say any, but you think about most companies in Web3, right? It could be somebody like me who's got the strategy background. You could have a product background, like a tech engineering background. We have a creative team, everything from, creative strategy to like producers to whatever it may be, right? Partnerships teams that are dealing with our talent, finance teams, legal teams, right? Like every sort of like function is there. And so it's not that you have to like feel like you've got to come through some specific function, at least today. But so I think that's sort of like the world is your oyster.
Yeah, I love that. I hope that feels, our audience feels empowered to get into that space after what you've all had to say, because it feels like there's room for everyone here. And I'm so glad that we could all come together to share this with everyone. And this webinar will be posted, in short clips in a lot of places. It will live on our website. So I hope we can inspire people to also get involved in this space. I'm going to go to some of our audience questions, and I'm going to start with Mary Lou's question. She says, for a fan, and Mary Lou, as we've talked about before, there's, this is basic level knowledge. There's no silly questions, no stupid questions. So for a fan who invests in their favorite player's NFT, is it risky? Aren't crypto markets super volatile? Or is the media maligning this unfairly?
I'll jump in quickly. I think the phraseology of your question is really interesting, Mary Lou, because you use the term invest. And if you think about collectibles today, at least me personally, I don't invest in a trading card. I buy a trading card because I want to follow this athlete or I like this athlete. So there's an element where if you see it as sort of a collectible that over time, like you're going to hold, and it's like any other collectible, it may go up, may go down. But the reason why your terminology is so interesting is because that is a lot of, I think, some of the earliest people in the space may be thought of more as investors, right? And so if you're going in from an investment perspective, it's a whole other thing. And yes, there are going to be risks associated with crypto and like general sort of market movement. But I think it just goes back to like, what is your inherent motivation behind it? And then if it is investment, what is your risk tolerance? But I think if you see it as a pure collectible, as a way to like commemorate either a player and I guess an athlete or an experience I've had or a memory that I've watched, I would argue that it's your willingness to pay is sort of like what sort of the fans experiences.
Thank you. I don't, Marcia or Stephanie, if you have anything to add, but Natalie, that was a great answer. I think Mary Lou, hopefully that helped answer your question.
Yeah, I think she answered it very, very well.
We have another question. How do you see traditional data analytics and GDPR issues fitting in with Web3?
Well, the interesting thing from here is I think there's going to be a lot of data needs with the ledger. And obviously, we're going to be starting to get a bunch of new data points, and how that data is managed per person, per across all your fan base, there's going to be a huge need there, because for me, you're going to have a whole new like data system and data points. So for me, there's a lot of ripe opportunity there on building products over how do you help teams manage these new transactions, these new data points in a meaningful way up, that they can actually do something with it. Because I definitely know one of the current problems is they get all of this data and then it's just like, what do you do with it? And it's like, this goes to the ticketing team, this goes to this team. And, blockchain can really bring all that into one sphere. But then again, you still have to have a meaningful way to pull it out and make it usable. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I definitely think data and products that are, helping mine and like sift through it is going to be something that's going to be needed for teams and in the space.
And maybe one other thing I'll add to that, which I think that's interesting about data analytics in this space is, if you think about it from the most traditional standpoint, that we are dealing with non-custodial wallets, which have no PII associated with them, it's a very different challenge than you face otherwise, right? Which is, now I am trying to understand the motivations and the behaviors of a wallet. And it's not uncommon for people to have multiple wallets. And so how do I then think about that person's journey, who they are, what motivated it, right? Bringing maybe Mary Lou's earlier question in, could I actually have a wallet that's like a bunch of investments, right? Where I'm doing something, and another one where it's for a completely other purpose. And so like, I think this will be, inconceivably could be, and I'm not super deep here, but like an interesting challenge for marketing and marketing analytics in terms of how do you think about going from understanding a person to understanding a wallet. So I think that's like a new challenge that this space poses. Although some of the things that we've talked about, making this more consumer accessible by attaching email addresses, would conceivably sort of get in front of some of those, but sort of to be seen.
Stephanie, is there anything that you're doing as in data collection and data analytics that you feel like is helpful to this question?
No, I mean, I think we're like, for us, we're just learning, right? So we're creating physical product and the digital NFT. And with every drop, we're gaining knowledge of what's the consumer experience. Are they, going through the whole flow painlessly? If not, what can we do next time so that we can, kind of make sure that the experience is right for someone who's not been already in this system, right? So there's, certainly there's a lot of NFT collectors out there, and there's a whole community of them. And we have, quite a few fans, I think, from that community that were excited and engage with us all the time. But at the same time, we think that the world should open up to others that are not knowing that much about NFTs, or like, I guess the word onboarding is used a lot. And so what we're doing is just taking the data from every single drop, and we're doing each of our drops a little differently. Like, we have a few drops, 2 different drops that are charitable drops. We did one for Ukraine, and we just did one recently for a hero of 9/11 named Wells Remy Crowther, for his charitable trust. And so we design a product around their story, and then we can get the donations for these, for Ukraine or for the Wells Crowther Trust. And then we can put them on the blockchain, and everybody can see that the donation has been made directly, exactly as we said it would be, right? So there's all just like lots of different, I guess, experiences that we're learning from with each drop. And now we're on our 6th one with physical and digital product. And so really, we're just kind of taking all the data and figuring out how we can continue to get the user experience to be seamless and to onboard new people that aren't already into NFTs to begin with, as well as keep, our current, fan base of people who are and who really do know the world of NFTs, keep them engaged as well. And so, there's a lot going on in Discord. We can learn from our communities by just speaking with them directly, get insights there. There's some data that we can collect there as well. Stephanie,
I have a question. Do you feel like it's the love of sneakers or the athlete that's driving the community, or the NFT?
I think with each drop, it's different. And so I think that our idea is to work in collaboration, because we do think that, we can get people excited that are fans of who we're collaborating with. And that's going to help onboard new people and to understand all the exciting experiences and connection they can get through the NFTs. So that's like a big part of our focus, is working with, people who have great stories to tell, and kind of building their fan base to get them onboarded. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It's a tool, obviously.
I know we are running short on time. We have one more question. I really appreciate everyone staying here and hanging out. And I think it's an interesting question, one I've thought myself. How does anyone know which blockchain to choose for ownership of their NFT? And I think this begs a larger question of, is there things to look out for that are sketchy, unreliable? Is there a way, like scams happening in this business? This is kind of a big open-ended question. But how do you decide like which blockchain it's going to live in? Or is that even the wrong way to be asking the question? But I think you all kind of get the idea.
I can venture a start, but I'm less tech heavy, so hopefully I don't make myself look like too much of a fool. I think when it comes to like choosing a blockchain, there are a few things to think about. They talk about blockchains in different layers. You have your like core layer ones. Ethereum is sort of like the one that people think about. It's got the most volume, at least by dollar volume, I believe, of any blockchain out there. So when you think about sort of like the blue chip quote unquote projects you hear about, a lot of them are on this like ETH layer 1. It used to be a proof of work blockchain. So the like energy required as it was like building the blocks or sort of confirming the blocks was more intensive and therefore more expensive when it came to minting. And then you had a bunch of like layer 2 spin up. You may hear about things like Polygon, which is a compatible chain with Ethereum. These are ones where you like cheaper to mint on, and I think faster processing speeds, things like this. But again, the exact numbers I'm not good at. But there are a way that, so like you can mint on these chains and then you can actually bridge the transactions over onto other chains. And so I think there are a few things to think about, which is how much volume is on the chain and sort of what type of volume. So Solana, for example, is another L2. Historically, it had more sort of like gaming assets that people would mint and sell on Solana versus ETH layer 1. And so it's just a matter of like, where do you think the consumers that you're going after are going to be? And then, yeah, thinking about energy, thinking about cost, all of those other things come into play. That is at a very high level, but there's a ton more nuance, but I'll let the other two take it from here, because we're now getting to the edge of my my technical expertise.
Yeah, I mean, I have similar in terms of technical expertise. My business partner certainly did most of the homework and has all the knowledge in terms of what we chose. But we've worked on 2 different blockchains, on Solana and Ethereum, and a lot of it did have to do like, where do we think our consumers are going to be, that will be excited about this project. And then for anybody sort of, wanting to create their own new project, I think they would want to look at costs. Certainly what's called gas fees on Ethereum can often be high, but sometimes aren't. And so there's some homework that they would want to do just to figure out like where, what makes the most sense for their project. Where would their consumer base be? Maybe they're going to go on to a marketplace, and those marketplaces only work with certain chains. So there's homework to be done, but I think there's a lot of information out there now that maybe wasn't even there like a year ago when we were starting.
Yeah, my just to build on what they said is kind of like there's just the big chains you've heard about, they just mentioned, and then the layer 2s with the cost, and then the merge with Ethereum. Basically, like the good thing about these blockchains is really the only way you lose your asset if that chain goes down. And so like who you're investing in or what you're buying, you have to be less worried about if the chain, you feel confident that the chain's gonna be there. And so that should give you peace of mind. If you buy something and then they go out of business, you're still fine, because it's on the chain. And so that should be kind of maybe your biggest worry. But in terms of chains, I think it's a lot of developer, like what language they write in. And that's really the only difference. And I really agree, like one of the next frontiers is going to be bridging all these like from everywhere. And there's already some, custodial wallet people that are kind of working on it. And that's then you're going to be able to have all your assets in one place from all the chains. So.
Yeah, thank you all for answering that question. I think it helps, as you said, give peace of mind to our audience, and just a little bit more of an idea of how, if people want to get into play in this space, how they can get started. I thank you all so much for being our fabulous guests, educating us all. I know we went a little bit over time, but I really value all of the knowledge that you brought to this, and the experience and the questions and the ideas. So I'm really excited that we were able to have this WIS Presents on NFTs and sports. I'm excited to share it with our community as well. And I just want to thank everyone who came to the webinar today for supporting our mission to change the ratio. We can't do this without all of you. So you can find all of our lovely panelists. They're all on LinkedIn, and they all have their respective websites and everything. So stay in touch. And we just reopened our WIS LinkedIn community group, so you can all gather on there, and we can all continue this conversation actually on there. That would be great. So thank you to everyone. I really appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you so much.
So much, Emma.
Thanks.